Keeping your IT team sharp isn't optional, it's essential. CBT Nuggets delivers high-quality IT training led by real-world experts who know what teams actually need on systems teams will actually use. Whether it's staying current on cloud, networking, or security, CBT Nuggets makes training simple, effective, and scalable. No fluff, no wasted time, just smarter, faster IT teams. Thousands of companies trust CBT Nuggets, and yours can too. Go to cbtnuggets.com/solutions and start training today.
This is the story of the one. As a custodial supervisor at a high school, he knows that during cold and flu season, germs spread fast. It's why he partners with Grainger to stay fully stocked on the products and supplies he needs, from tissues to disinfectants to floor scrubbers. All so that he can help students, staff, and teachers stay healthy and focused. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hey folks, good evening and welcome to Phantoms and Monsters Radio, where the veil between the known and the unknown is lifted, one story at a time. Welcome you and all our listeners, including first-time chat participants. I hope you find tonight's subject and reports interesting. For decades, people across the globe have whispered about shadowy, semi-invisible entities. Beings that shimmer like heat waves, bend the light around their bodies, and move silently through our world. Known to many as the Glimmer Man, these mysterious figures evoke the cloaking technology of the Predator films. Yet, witnesses insist their experiences are all too real. And in this episode, we'll explore terrifying new reports from Queensland, Australia, to the forest of Illinois, from the Catskill Mountains to the suburbs of Chicago. Eyewitnesses described force field-like sensations, clicking noises in the night, glowing eyes, and the eerie dread that often precedes these encounters. Some claim these beings walk among us in the malls, backyards, and hunting grounds, leaving physical effects and lifelong impressions. Are these entities extraterrestrial visitors, interdimensional watchers, or cryptid cousins of Bigfoot and other shapeshifters? Or are they something far stranger, beings that blend physical and non-physical existence, appearing only when they choose? We'll break down the testimonies, compare patterns across decades, and ask the critical question, what do these cloaked beings want from us? Join us as we uncover the most compelling new Glimmer Man sightings ever documented. cases that may forever alter the way we think about reality itself. But before I proceed, please consider supporting the channel by clicking and subscribing and using the like buttons, and by sharing our content. Super chat and super thanks donations are appreciated. You can click the dollar icon located below the chat box. You can also use the PayPal and Buy Me a Coffee links in the description. Thanks for your support and consideration. Your comments are always welcome. Please let me or the moderators know which accounts you found interesting in the presentation, or share any suggestions for upcoming shows. I want to thank everyone associated with the channel as well. Now, if you're in this chat and have a question, please use all caps, and I'll try to get to each one of them after the presentation. Now, for those who are live, I'm a little behind the schedule here. I had some problems with the internet, kind of going up and down. So hopefully it'll level itself out during the show. So sit back and relax and try to enjoy. Now, in early 2025, a Queensland woman felt a powerful magnetic-like force as a transparent, shimmery figure passed directly through her in a shopping mall. Her mother, seated nearby, confirmed that she had seen the mysterious form, an encounter eerily reminiscent of the elusive Glimmer Man. Now, this report was recently forwarded to me from a witness who had read a previous post on the Phantoms and Monsters blog. Now, she tells me, several months ago, in early 2025, my mom and I went to a shopping mall to buy some yarn for a project she was working on. We live in Queensland, Australia. After purchasing some wool at the store, my mom realized that we also wanted white yarn. Now, being older, I let her sit down while I went back to get the white ball of yarn. As I exited the shop and walked towards her, sitting on a public bench, I suddenly felt a strange sensation as if I were caught between two magnets. It felt heavy and intense. I grabbed the shopping trolley and exclaimed, "What was that?" It was such a powerful feeling, almost like a force field. At the exact moment, my mom told me that she had just seen a transparent, shimmering figure pass through me. I'm not sure if it was a Glimmer Man, but she said it had the form and it was transparent. It was such a surreal and bizarre experience. She saw this figure, and I felt it as it passed through me, of all places in a shopping mall. I consider asking security to check the CCTV footage, but I couldn't think of how to explain what happened. So in this next account, a woman from Illinois shares her chilling lifelong encounters with a cloaked predator-like being, first as a child near the Cloaked Mountains, and later as an adult outside her apartment. From shimmering heat wave-like distortions to unsettling clicking sounds, her story echoes other mysterious sightings of invisible humanoids, leaving her to ponder if anyone else had faced these hidden watchers. Now, she tells me, this is 100% true, and it's tough for me to share because every time I've tried to tell someone about it, I get laughed at and accused of just trying to pull their leg. I recently came across an article about a woman who was hunting and saw an invisible or cloaked creature that she described as being almost like the predator from the movie of the same name. I read her story and I saw the picture she took of this predator. Personally, I think the image is the combination of lens flare from the sun and a close-up of possibly her face or something similar. However, I'm not dismissing her story. In fact, I relate to it because I too have had a similar experience, which is what prompted me to see if anyone else had encountered something like a predator in the woods. Now on to my encounter. When I was about 5 years old, I was playing at the edge of the woods behind my grandmother's house. I played there often, and my grandma kept an eye on me from the kitchen or living room as the house had huge windows that faced the woods. She would come out every once in a while to check on what I was up to. I was obsessed with digging in the dirt and collecting unusual rocks and arrowheads that littered the land where my grandmother lived. I should mention that this was in Midwest Illinois, not far from the Cloaked Mountains, so finding arrowheads was quite common. Anyway, that day I remembered picking a spot to dig. I had been out there for quite a while, and I had a decent-sized hole going when something caught my eye in the tree next to me. It was hard to explain, but it looked almost like a heat wave coming off the branch. I distinctly remember it was fall. I was wearing my pink jacket and thought my mom would be upset because I had dirt on the sleeves from digging. There were also many leaves scattered on the ground. Now, as I stared at this heat wave, I realized it was a human shape. At 5 years old, I was wondering why there was an invisible man in the tree. I felt scared, but also unsure of what to do. Then it began to move and made a faint clicking sound. That's when I decided I shouldn't be seeing this, and I quickly ran back to the house. My grandmother noticed I was shaken, and I remember telling her that what I'd just seen was an angel. Now, in my 5-year-old mind, I couldn't think of anything else like it could be. I had never heard of angels, ghosts, or monsters, so to me, it had to be an angel. Fast forward to when I was about 12 years old. By this time, the encounter was far from my mind. I loved watching action and sci-fi movies. Now, one day, my dad rented the movie Predator. While watching it with him, the first thing you see, the invisible or cloaked predator, I was terrified. All the memories from the day of digging in the dirt came flooding back. I even asked my dad if the predator was real and if he knew of any animal or creature with a cloaking ability that I was unaware of. He told me it was all fake. Back then, it wasn't like today where I could Google it. I had no access to the internet, so I pushed it out of my mind once again. Now, fast forward to around the year 2004. I was an adult with 3 small children. After recently separating from my husband, I moved my children into an apartment in the town next over. These apartments were all single-level duplexes, and there was a total of 5 buildings. I lived in the very last apartment of the previous building. Although the flats were considered in town, they were situated on the outskirts. Now, behind the buildings, a deep ditch separated our backyard from an area behind the chain link fence. On our side of the wall, there were 6 or 7 trees. If you followed the ditch a short distance, you would reach a small forest that eventually led to the countryside, with larger forest and farmland beyond. I was a smoker, but didn't smoke in the apartment because of the kids, so I often went to the back porch for a cigarette. One night, I was up late doing the laundry after the kids had gone to bed. I decided to take a smoke break before heading to sleep. Now, while on the porch, I began to hear a faint clicking sound. Since I had seen a groundhog in the ditch a few days earlier, I looked there and thinking it might be out there again. An outside light near the playground dimly lit the yard to the right of my porch. I didn't turn on my porch light. I usually didn't if I was going out there for a quick smoke. Now, not seeing any groundhog or movement in the ditch, I continued smoking. The faint clicking noise persisted, and a slight movement drew my attention to the tree to the left of my porch. There it was, an exact invisible figure I had seen when I was 5. It was a distortion in the shape of a humanoid crouched down on the branch with one arm holding on to the tree trunk. I couldn't believe it. My thoughts raced. Is this really happening? Is it here to harm me for seeing it those many years ago? All I could think about was my kids sleeping in the apartment. I rushed inside, slammed the door, and locked it. I ran to check the kids' room, making sure all the windows were closed, and then turned off the lights in the living room, staring out the blinds at the tree, hoping to catch another glimpse of it. I sat there for a good 10 minutes, but I couldn't see anything. Just as I was starting to convince myself that I was just tired and imagining things, my neighbor's dog came running across the yard, barking at the same branch where I had seen the predator. This startled me because the dog was not a barker. I had never heard it bark at anything, not even at the groundhog that had been hanging around the ditch. The barking continued for a few minutes until I listened to the neighbor call the dog back inside. The dog reluctantly turned to go home, stopping every few feet to look back at the tree branch until it was out of sight. I didn't sleep that night, and I have never seen anything like it again. I'm not sure what to make of it. I'm a grown woman with kids and a promising career. I would like to know if anyone else has had a similar experience. I know what I saw, believe it or not. Thanks for taking the time to read this. I'm about 2 hours from Carbondale. Now, in this next account, let's see. In 1970s, a young child playing near their home in the Catskill Mountains witnessed a chilling phenomena. The outline of a tall, transparent man standing silently beside their friends. Though the memory faded for years, it resurfaced later in life after hearing a strikingly similar account, raising the question of whether these cloaked beings are watching us more often than we realize. They tell me, I had a bizarre experience in the cat.
This is the story of the one. As head of maintenance at a concert hall, he knows the show must always go on. That's why he works behind the scenes, ensuring every light is working, the HVAC is humming, and his facility shines. With Grainger's supplies and solutions for every challenge he faces, plus 24/7 customer support, his venue never misses a beat. Call quickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Catskill Mountains in upstate New York. Now, if you're not familiar with the Catskills, they're known for their dense woods, low population, and true immersion in nature. Now, back in the 1970s, we had the freedom to roam and spend a lot of time outside. I remember it being a gorgeous sunny day and the maple leaves turning bright red, orange, yellow, and some remaining green. I was with a group of children, and since we hadn't started kindergarten yet, I was around 4 years old. About 3 or 4 of the other kids were playing in the woods. I began to follow the group, but suddenly I felt scared and decided to stay behind closer to the house, about 50 yards in a more open area. This overwhelming fear came over me, a sensation I can still distinctly remember. I watched my friends play and wanted to join them, but something kept me from going. My older sister was with the other kids, so I kept looking over to her, trying to decide whether to join them or not. Then, while I was watching, I saw the shape of a tall, invisible man that appeared see-through. I remember the leaves blowing in the wind, but the leaves around him were blurry, while everything else was in perfect focus. I couldn't make sense of what I was seeing, but I confirmed that it resembled the outline of a man with sharp features. He was standing about 5 to 8 foot away from the group, watching them play. I kept looking at this figure for what felt like at least 5 minutes, or as a child would say, a while. I then started yelling and calling for my sister to come back. She could hear that I was worried as I kept shouting, "A man is next to you." With my legs feeling heavy, I began running closer to the house, and that's when all the other children started running and following me. They kept asking what I saw, and I replied, "A man, but you can see through him." It was something I couldn't process at the time, and I forgot about it until I had watched a documentary where a woman shared a similar experience. That memory suddenly flooded back. I know what I saw, yet I don't usually tell people about it because it sounds unreal. I'm hoping to connect with anyone else who might have had the same experience, and so that they can feel a bit less alone. Now, this next account, a woman tells me, I'm no storyteller, but I try to recall as many details as possible. My experience happened on September 2nd, 2022, which isn't too long ago. I had been out during the day running errands for my elderly dad. Later that evening, I returned to his apartment located in a small residential building in Chicago. His apartment is on the 6th floor. Now, at some point during the evening, I decided to step out onto the balcony for a quick cigarette. I was standing there, staring off the distance, not thinking about much. As I stood there with my cigarette in hand, I shifted my position and noticed a large tree about 20 feet away, about 15 feet from me. Or from 15 feet below me, excuse me. I realized that one of the branches on the tree was sagging heavily, which I thought was unusual at the time. Now, as I continued to observe this branch, I was suddenly overwhelmed by the intense feeling of dread and fear. Every part of my body screamed to me to turn around and run, but I didn't understand why. Now, at that moment, a bowing branch I had been watching began to shake violently. Despite my instinct to flee, curiosity got the better of me, and I moved closer to the railing for a better look. Then I saw it. At first, I noticed a small glimmering form that, upon closer inspection, transformed into what I could only describe as a transparent human figure shimmering in a yellow-white color. I quickly broke my fixated stare and stepped back from the railing. Suddenly, it dawned on me what I had witnessed. This being had dropped from the tree and landed on the ground below, directly behind a man who had been walking past at that same moment. The man immediately turned around, thinking someone had thrown them something at them. I noticed a cloud of smoke or dust rising from behind him. I waited for some time, expecting to see this thing reemerge from the dust, but it was gone. Now, coincidentally, another neighbor a few floors below had also seen the same thing I did, and they confirmed all the details. The neighbor and I tracked down the man who had walked past a few hours earlier and spoke to him. He said he felt an impact but didn't see anything when he turned around. He also reported experiencing the same sense of dread I had felt just hours before. Does anyone have any idea what these beings might be? Can they be dangerous? Now, this next account, the witness states, "Hi, I live near Birmingham, Alabama, and I have an outdoor entertainment system that I use a lot during the summer. It consists of a large projection screen and some outdoor furniture. My 16-year-old son and I enjoy watching movies late in the night during the warm months. Now, one night around 2 or 3 a.m., while we were watching a movie, I suddenly heard a clicking sound that sounded like electricity turning on and off. It also resembled the snapping of a fire, which worried me since I live on a farm with miles of open land. I briefly paused the movie to listen more closely. My son quickly whispered, 'I hear it too.' I always bring a bright shop flashlight with me when we're outside, so I grabbed it and shone it in the open field behind us. I couldn't see anything, but the noise persisted. Then suddenly I froze. It felt as if the beam of light stopped about 10 feet away from me, and it had hit something invisible. When I moved the flashlight to the side, the beam spread out all over the ground like it should have. At this point, my son, who is generally unafraid of anything, he loves true crime documentaries, missing people stories, and horror movies, started to panic. This frightened me because I knew something was wrong. Then he blurted out, 'It's a Glimmer Man, Mom. We have to get out of here now.' I had no idea what he was talking about. I'm into the supernatural, but I hadn't even heard of that term before. We quickly went back inside, but I felt I needed to collect our projector and other items we had left outside. I couldn't just leave everything out there. By the time I returned to the entertainment area, the noise had stopped, which made me slightly less afraid. And after gathering all our belongings, I decided to take another look to ensure no fire had started. As I shone the flashlight around, I was startled when the beam was suddenly blocked and then unblocked, as if something had run through it. At that point, I was terrified, so I rushed back into the house. Later, I looked up the accounts of the Glimmer Man, and it seemed like that's what I had witnessed." Now, this next account, the witness tells me, "Recently, I received some bad news. My health is deteriorating quickly. With the ongoing pandemic and my cancer diagnosis, I felt it was important to share my story while I still can. I'm in my 60s now, but this story takes place when I was in my 30s. I was around 34, 35 when it all happened. I lived in Caldwell, a suburb of Boise, Idaho, while my grandparents resided to the north in the Hells Canyon wilderness area. They lived in a small town called New Meadows, located in Adams County along the Little Salmon River. The white-tailed deer hunting on public land was fantastic. Now, I had been driving up to hunt with my brothers, uncles, and fathers since I was a teenager, so I was very familiar with the area. I loved it there until I had an experience in the woods that changed everything. It was late summer, and a buddy named Ryan and I were heading to the New Meadows to pick up some supplies I had stored at my grandparents' house. We planned to find a good spot to set up our deer stands. We arrived at one of the trailheads I was familiar with and began walking the trails, searching for a promising spot to set up camp. Everything seemed typical for a day of scouting. We saw plenty of wildlife and noticed stands set up by other hunters, some looking recent while others appeared old and abandoned. Now, after a few hours, we found suitable spots and set up our stands. Now, Ryan's stand was about 1,000 yards northwest of mine, so we agreed to walk together to my stand, and then Ryan would continue to his every morning and evening. When the hunt was over, I would wait at my stand until Ryan met up with me, and then we would head back to our vehicle together. Ryan was in much better shape than I was, and I was about 7 years younger than him. We met at work and both shared the love for the outdoors. Now, as deer season approached, we were excited and eager to start hunting. We followed our plans several times, walking out together, splitting up the hunt, and then reuniting to share our experience on the way back to the truck. The routine happened 6 or 7 times. However, as the weeks progressed, it became difficult for us to hunt together due to the work and family commitments. There were a few occasions when either Ryan or I would hunt alone, but that was no big deal. It was all part of the routine. During the weekends, we would hunt together, but during the week, we often went out solo. So one week, Ryan went hunting alone a few times while I had to wait for the weekend due to work. I would call him to ask how it went. Did you get anything? Did you see anything? He always replied that he hadn't seen much, just some tracks. I told him I would see him this weekend, but he said he couldn't make it. I replied, okay, no problem. I'll go next week. The following week came and Ryan said that he couldn't make it because he wasn't feeling well. I asked if he had gone during the week and he said he hadn't. Again, I thought nothing of it, but whatever. The week after that also came and went without Ryan. This pattern continued week after week, even though deer season would soon be coming to an end. Ryan loved hunting and fishing. He frequently discussed deer hunting, had subscriptions to several hunting magazines, watching hunting videos, and attended trade shows. For him to suddenly find any and every excuse not to go hunting seemed odd, so I decided to ask him, hey man, what's going on? You last came out a few weeks ago. Is everything okay? He assured me everything was fine, saying he was just swamped, and that was that. I continued to hunt alone for the rest of the season. I failed to bag a buck that year, but I was more frustrated by the loss of my hunting buddy. For the next few months, I reached out to Ryan, and everything seemed normal. Spring arrived, and I discussed scouting for a new place to hunt that year, a spot that would be better. I invited him to join me, and he said it sounded fun. So a few weeks later, I checked in to see if he was ready to go hunting, but he told me he couldn't make it again, offering more excuses. He kept putting off until we finally said he wouldn't be hunting this fall because he was too busy and suggested maybe another time. I was shocked, so I decided to go it alone this new season. I found a spot that looked promising. So one day I walked to Ryan's old hunting location and I noticed his stand was still in the tree. He never came to retrieve it. I decided to give his spot a try. So one morning I arrived earlier than usual, and as it was a longer hike, I headed out to Ryan's stand. I climbed up and settled in. Now for the first hour, everything seemed normal. However, after about an hour and a half, I noticed it suddenly went quiet, deathly quiet. It was if I was in a vacuum. I could hear my heartbeat, but that was it. No birds, insects, squirrels, or chipmunks, not even the breeze. I remember thinking, man, this is crazy. I've never heard it this quiet before. This is strange. This silence continued for about 10 minutes. Then I noticed something out of the corner of my eye about 70 yards away in the trees. I could see movement, but couldn't tell what it was. A sense of dread washed over me as if something was wrong. I don't scare easily, but I was suddenly struck with fear and had no idea why. This thing was still moving around in the trees and I couldn't focus on it. I kept telling myself, what the hell is that? What is it? Then when it jumped to a neighboring tree, allowing me a better look, I say better, but what I saw is hard to put into words. Whatever it was had 2 arms, a head, a torso, and 2 legs, but I wouldn't describe it as a man because it wasn't one. It was about 6 feet tall, perhaps even shorter. It jumped to the next tree and squatted on a limb, surveying the area. I was too scared to move, so I sat there watching in amazement. The forest was still, but this thing just sat there. It looked like water, liquid, almost like clear plastic. It was nearly impossible to see when it stopped moving, but you could see it much better when it moved. The whole time I kept thinking to myself, what the hell is that? Is it a Sasquatch? Is it a ghost? I had no idea, and I didn't want to know. I didn't want it to know I was there. I resolved not to move until it was gone. For an hour, I continued to watch this thing intently, never taking my eyes off of it, not even for a second. I don't think it saw me. It never indicated that it was aware of my presence, which I'm thankful for. Eventually it disappeared into the woods. I quickly climbed down from Ryan's stand and hurried back to my truck. Sitting in the cab, I tried to wrap my mind around what I'd just witnessed. What was that thing? Am I going crazy? Am I losing my mind? Do I have a brain tumor? I must be hallucinating. But no, I saw it. I watched it for a long time. Whatever it was real. I drove home and said nothing to anyone about the whole ordeal. I didn't want them to think that I was crazy or anything like that. For the next few weeks, I found myself thinking about it constantly every time I laid down to sleep, while showering or during drives alone in my truck. That memory would flood back into my mind. What did I see? Eventually, I reached out to Ryan and asked him if I could visit him, and he agreed. One Saturday around lunchtime, I drove over to Ryan's place and we chatted about what we had been up to, how life was going, just usual topics. Then I started to tell him about my deer season and mentioned that one day I hiked up to his stand and hunted from it. His reaction was shocking. He turned pale and had a strange look in his face that I'll never forget. I asked him, "Dude, are you okay?" He replied, "Did you see anything?" I said, "No, man, I didn't see any deer." And he responded, "I'm not talking about deer. Did you see anything?" At that moment, I realized what he was implying, and I knew he had experienced something. So I said, "Yeah, I'll tell you exactly what I saw." I recounted everything to him, and he revealed that he had seen it too, and he was lucky it didn't see me. His encounter had been much different from mine. He explained that the entity not only saw him, but forced him out of the woods, which is why he never returned. He wanted to tell me about it, but didn't know how to. He sold all his hunting equipment and vowed never to set foot in the woods again. We talked for hours, and even now, we still don't know what we saw. Ryan thinks it might be a demon or something alien. I'm still uncertain, but I know that it sounds unbelievable. I'm relieved he saw it as well. It confirms that I didn't hallucinate the whole thing. I did see what I saw, even though I still don't understand it. Some friends of mine heard your show about the Glimmer Man sightings and encouraged me to listen. I did, and I was surprised to discover that other people have seen it as well. I no longer feel alone in the experience. I want to share my story with you because it deserves to be documented somewhere. Now, Ryan passed away 4 years ago in a tragic motorcycle accident. Perhaps one day we will finally figure out what the Glimmer Man is. And Gene Crane, I want to thank you for your donation. Much appreciated. Now, this next account, the witness states, I would like to share a terrifying experience I had in 2002 while I was in college. At the time, I was in my second year at the University of Florida, living in an apartment with a girlfriend and fellow student in Gainesville, Florida. We were living the typical college life, attending classes, studying and socializing with friends, and occasionally go to weekend parties. As two broke college girls, we were always looking for ways to save money. Now, during our free time, we sought out inexpensive activities such as going to the movies, bowling, visiting flea markets, attending yard sales, and hiking in the local parks. Now, hiking was one of my favorite pastimes. I love the outdoors, and it's a great form of exercise. We had a dog named Toby, a golden retriever who had since passed away. He was an excellent, loving companion who loved to hike with me, and we went 3 times a week. Our favorite spot was the Gainesville Hawthorne State Trail, which was nearby and offered a 16-mile hike if you completed the whole thing. However, we typically hiked about 5 miles. The trail is beautiful, filled with trees draped in Spanish moss, swamps, and an abundance of wildlife. The paths are paved and feature bridges, observation decks, and many interesting sights. These woods are dense, so once you stray off the main path, you can only see about 35 yards into the forest. Now, on this day, Toby and I were about 4 miles into the trail. It was a weekday around 11 a.m., and we encountered very few people. At that moment, it was just Toby and me. Now, as we hiked, I was enjoying the sun and the beauty of nature while keeping an eye out for wildlife. Then suddenly, Toby froze. He stood still with his ear perked up, his tail sticking straight out. He was intensely staring into the trees. I assumed he had spotted some birds or something similar, so I asked, "What do you see, Toby? What is it, boy?" He didn't bark, but I could tell something had caught his attention. As I looked in the direction he was focused on, I noticed Toby's demeanor began to change. His tail went from standing straight out to lying between his legs. He started to whimper and pulled on the leash as if he wanted to leave that spot. I kept my gaze fixed on the trees, trying to figure out what was frightening Toby, and that's when I saw it. It's hard to describe, but it appeared clear, yet not entirely so. It had the shape of a human, complete with a head, torso, 2 arms, and 2 legs, but it was see-through. The most striking feature was its glowing yellow eyes. That was the only part that stood out clearly. Believe it or not, this thing reminded me of the alien from the Predator movies when it was cloaking itself. It was perched on a large tree branch hanging by its right arm, and it was gazing directly at Toby and me. Then it suddenly crouched down, trying to hide behind a tree trunk as if it had noticed us noticing it. I don't know why I kept referring to it as him. I had no idea what the creature's gender was, if that's even applicable. Although it tried to conceal itself, I could still see portions of it peeking out from behind the trunk. I was frozen, mesmerized by this being, focusing intently on it to figure out what it was. I didn't want to look away for fear I might lose sight of it. It was incredibly camouflaged. As if I glanced away, I might not be able to find it again. So I kept staring, ignoring Toby's whimpers. Then it moved. It swung through the trees effortlessly and made almost no sound. It would dart to a few different trees and freeze, then look back at us as if it checking whether we were still watching. It felt like this creature didn't want to be seen. It would shift, freeze, and crouch down, positioning itself between us and the tree it was hiding in. It would stay like that for a few minutes before moving again. I wanted to follow it, but everything within me screamed no. So I just continued to watch, and eventually it disappeared into the forest. Toby and I jogged back to the car, and I never mentioned what I'd seen to anyone. To this day, I still don't know what I witnessed. Was it alien? Was it something else? I don't know. I felt scared that day it happened, but at the same time, I was elated. Toby and I returned to that spot numerous times, and I won't lie, I hope to see it again, but I never did. I thought it was only one I was the only one who had seen this type of encounter until I heard about all the covering. The Glimmer Man. I saw it. I saw the Glimmer Man. Now, I tell everyone who will listen, of course, some folks think I'm crazy, but I don't care. I feel lucky to have had the experience with the paranormal, something unknown. I believe the universe is far more complex than we realize, and there are things out there that we just can't explain. But it's okay. I like it that way. Now, this next account, the witness states, my husband shared an account of a Glimmer Man sighting, which I'm retelling. I just had to repeat it. I just had him repeat it to me again to ensure that I didn't get the story wrong. He grew up in Vermont, where the landscape is very wooded. It seemed like a peaceful place, but even in areas with extensive woods, there's often a strange sense. I firmly believe that the woods are not fully human territory. They belong to animals and potentially other unknown entities. About 30 years ago, when my husband was still in high school, he and his friends were hanging out at a friend's house, which was located about 50 feet away from the edge of the forest. My husband has never smoked, drank, or used any type of mind-altering substances due to a medical condition. So he was entirely of sound mind when he randomly glanced at the edge of the forest. To his astonishment, he saw a tall, invisible humanoid figure strolling along in the tree line. He watched it as it walked the length of the property until it disappeared. He noticed it because he was looking directly at the spot where it had just appeared, which he found bizarre. He didn't mention to his friends and chose to play it off as nothing had happened. Aside from the peculiar predator-like invisibility aspect, the only description he could provide was that it had a humanoid shape and was tall, swinging its arms slowly as it moved. My husband is a practical, no-nonsense man with great integrity, which makes him different from those who tend to fabricate such stories. Over time, he has encountered several strange phenomena in the Vermont woods. His account intrigues me, but I hope never to have a similar experience. Now, this next account, the witness states, I was near Lake Huron in Ontario, and I was driving south in a taxi. I was working as a taxi driver at the time, and I passed through the area. On my way back, only about 10 minutes later, I came upon a very bizarre scene. There was a deer cut in half on the road, and it was not hit by a truck. This deer looked like it had been through quite a struggle, and there were large footprints all around it. Standing over top of it was about an 8.5-foot Bigfoot. It looked like yellow flashlights were glowing out of its eyes. I took my car and I passed the Bigfoot. I put it in reverse and I hit the gas. I drove through the Bigfoot. His arm went through the window of my car and my head, and it was just like it was a hologram. And he moved very quickly when he did this. After that, I went over to the side of the road and I looked, and it looked like it was climbing down into a ditch and down into the ground like it was a hole there. It was the most bizarre thing that ever happened. I see a deer cut in half like that was something that a car couldn't do. I was like, well, if this is a physical creature, how did it rip the deer in half? There were bloody footprints all around the deer. I tried to hit it because I thought it would at least do some damage to the Bigfoot, so we would have one finally. So that's not a great way to discover Bigfoot. CS, thank you for your donation. Much appreciated. Now, folks, that was the last account. If you have any questions, feel free to put them up in caps, and we'll see what we can answer. Let's see. John, hi, Lon. I read somewhere Bigfoot hides just below the surface and can see everything being so elusive. Your thoughts are appreciated. I guess it could be. I mean, as far as maybe utilizing this type of cloaking, maybe it does. I have talked to several people who swear that the Glimmer Man's a Bigfoot or other type of cryptid. So I don't know, but what you stated, it may very well be true. There's a reason why why these things have, we don't have a body, or why these things are hard to see, or they seem sometimes to just slowly manifest or disappear. But we really don't have any idea what it is. Paranormalism Net. Do Glimmer Man sightings occur during any particular weather conditions or season? Yeah, I've had them. I don't think it really matters. I've even read accounts that happened in winter with a lot of snow in the woods. So I don't think that even matters. Dagnammit, do you think the praying mantis cryptid could be a so-called shimmering, the shimmering invisible heat wave humanoid? I guess, of course we don't really know. The mantis man or whatever this thing was that was seen up near Hackettstown, New Jersey, which I was on Monsters and Mysteries in America. And then when I reported on, it did seem to have that invisibility, that shimmering effect in some of the sightings. So maybe it is. I don't know. It could very well be. But yeah, that being definitely had some type of cloaking abilities. Anything else, folks? Dagnammit, what do you think of Mel's Hole, the bottomless pit in eastern Washington? I don't know what to think about that thing. I had an account recently from that same area of some weird phenomena, and the first thing I thought was maybe that was due to Mel's Hole. Now, for people who don't know the story, this gentleman who supposedly had this bottomless pit or hole found on his property, he was talking about it. Actually, he had reported with Art Bell on Coast to Coast, and that's kind of where it continued on. And for about a year or so, he kept calling in and talking about it until he disappeared. Then I think Art tracked him down, and eventually some so-called government agents or government agency had come in and blocked the place off. This guy eventually moved off. So I don't know what the real story was with Mel's Hole, but I don't know what to think about it. I don't even know if it was real. I mean, I know Art really took it to the point where he thought it was real, but I haven't heard much about it since then. And quite frankly, I don't think anybody even really knows where it's at now, if it disappeared or it's been covered up or filled in or whatever. Jose Sanchez, about how many Glimmer Man sightings would you say are reported on an average yearly average in the U.S.? I don't know. This phenomena is fairly new to the cryptid world. I start getting interested in it when guys over at Expanded Perspectives, Kyle and Cam, started talking about it on their show, and they started sending me accounts, which I started putting on Phantoms and Monsters. And since then, we've continued to receive them. I guess maybe I get a dozen or so a year. They may get as much or more because they talk about it a lot. And in fact, Cam and Cal and I have written a book, which I just sent to the editor about 2 weeks ago. So it's about the Glimmer Man, and the sightings reports have been sent to us. So when that is finally released and published, published and released, I'll mention about it, and it'll be out there for y'all to get copies of. And we'll see how it goes. I don't think there's any other book out there that even explains or even tries to explain the phenomena. But, I wasn't even involved with this for about 10 years as far as the actual phenomenon itself. But the sightings have increased. Why so? I don't know. Okay. Well, I want to thank each and all of you for watching and chatting. If you donated, genuinely appreciate it. Your support's what makes all this possible. Please like, subscribe, and share. Now, if you have a sighting or encounter report that you'd like to be considered for the Personal Report Show, you can post it and or have it posted on Fams and Monsters. You can contact me at Strickler at famsmonsters.com, or you can go to famsmonsters.com, and there is a reporting link there where you can put all your information and have it sent directly to me. And we got a few bells and whistles that we're working on with the website. We're going to actually start working on a bi-monthly newsletter that I'm going to send out to folks who supply their email. So that'll be, when that goes up on the website, I will let everybody know about it. It's not going to be a sprawling thing. I'll probably do about 500 emails, and then just, when I get the 500 email addresses, I'll kind of cut it off at that. And when people pull out of it, we'll allow others. I might expand it. We'll just see how popular it gets. But anyway, until we meet again, hopefully next Friday, stay healthy and safe. Have a good night. Have a great weekend. Talk to you later. Bye.